We're the first generation that know climate change is happening, that know that we are responsible for it, and know that we can make a difference. But it's these next 10 years that are going to make it possible to make a difference.
I think finally people are coming to grips with the fact that we actually have to do something, and I don't mean scientists alone, but the general public and policymakers. And on the other hand, on the science side of it, we are starting to develop the technologies that are actually able to solve the problems that people are now starting to really get worried about.
Yes, there are big problems, big challenges that we face as humanity, but as scientists, we also do have the answers and we can come up with solutions.
There's lots to look forward to in the exploration of the solar system. The future is bright with possibilities. But to me, in the end, the story of all our interplanetary explorations has been a story about longing. A longing to understand us, a longing to know where we came from.
There's a very high proportion of species on Earth that are imminently threatened by extinction. But genomics gives us a tool, probably the best tool, to try to mitigate this by trying to match the genetic characteristics of populations with the environment of the future, so we can assist that population to survive by helping to move genes to places where they will be adaptive in the future.
We are using tissue engineering for the creation of meat. Stem cells are sitting in our muscle tissue. They can replicate so that from very little tissue you can make an enormous amount of tissue, thereby reducing the number of animals that you use. And these cells are, in addition to proliferating, they're also very capable of producing tissue. So they basically are capable of producing exactly the same tissue that we currently are eating. So we can create those, and thereby we can create basically the same thing, meat, but mostly without the cow. You can do this for any type of animal that has stem cells in its muscle. And as far as we know, fish, birds, mammals, they all have that. You can even reduce the amount of saturated fatty acids and increase the amount of unsaturated fatty acid and make it healthier.
Public health has been using kind of all the technologies in the past, but now we have a wide range of tools, of instruments we can use. We are observing this omics revolution, which means that we have tools to explore molecular changes in the bodies of people. Probably for the first time we are able to connect the external environment with internal changes in our body and with diseases.
We're obviously trying to reduce many diseases, so we simply took all of the knowledge of the past. We created the biggest database on chemical effects in the world. We have 70 million chemical structures. This is almost everything a chemist has ever synthesized. And we have 300,000 of them which have data. This allows us now to produce a map of similarity. By placing any substance, we can now say, what are the neighbors? Are they producing allergies? Are they damaging the skin? Are they damaging the eye? For the first time we have shown objectively that the computer can outperform the animal test.
The best tools for synthesis neuroscience is using and leveraging the massive computing power and the infrastructures that they are to actually digitize life. So we can see this as sort of a digital age, the 21st century, moving into where we will have digital forms of tissue, where you see the tissue, but you can also zoom in and see the molecules and the genes. And that allows us to really start taking all our knowledge, piecing it together, and understand the causal chain of events. I think that what we can look forward to in the future is really a digital synthesis of our data and our knowledge.
So our approach is that we have to deconstruct the neural elements of choice. So we want to understand very precisely what's going on in an individual's brain when they make decisions, and then we want to build on that to improve decision making. For example, we're now getting at a much better understanding of how emotions play into an individual's decision making. We are trying to make people to regulate their emotions and thereby to change their choices. In 2030, what may happen is that we may combine knowledge from brain scans with information from wearable sensors, so that basically an algorithm could tell you, for example, when you're about to get hungry, then we ask you to do emotion regulation with a little app, and then you probably make better health choices.
We know about 500 brain diseases, but we don't know even systematically how to cure each one of them today. For example, Parkinson, which is really in a very particular small region, some million of brain cells or nerve cells are not functioning well in this particular region. So the question is how to target this region and fix it when it starts to go wrong. So if you ask me the vision for, let's say, the next 30 years, I'm sure that there will be probes within our brain detecting some difficulties, and we will have developed nanorobots to fix them locally. I see this coming very exponentially because of AI, because of robots, nanotechnology, and because of genetics. These three things together are shifting the brain to be able to control itself.
Why do organisms age? Why do they have different ages? And how does that aging affect the brain? What we got fascinated by is that factors in the blood can influence how the brain functions. So in mice we can show that an old mouse in some respects is like an old person may not remember, for example, where it can find food or where it can find its nest. That this old mouse that doesn't learn well can be regenerated or rejuvenated with blood from a young mouse. The brain functions better again, and we can show that the stem cells in the brain get activated, there is less inflammation. So we're really excited about this possibility that we could actually translate this to human. What we're trying to do is not to make people live longer, but we're trying to sort of mimic how centenarians live. So centenarians are people who live above 95. What's very unique about these people is that they don't have these age-related diseases. They don't live for 40, 50 years with disease. That would be the ideal, right? If you have 90 years to live on this planet, that you could live for 89 years, healthy.
Health of the populations has constantly increased in the last decades. Life expectancy has constantly increased. My concern is mainly about disadvantaged sectors of the population or low-income countries. Well, many low-income countries are making a lot of progress, in fact, but still we see great disparities, not only in income, but also in health.
We have worked with the Millennium Development Goals to decrease maternal mortality, child mortality, HIV, malaria, mainly in those countries that are affected. In 2000, 1,600 women were dying every day because of pregnancy. So while trying to give life, you die. Today it is only 800, but it's still two big Boeings crashing every day. It has to do a lot with women's rights. The right of a woman to decide when she wants to get pregnant, with whom she wants to get pregnant. It is about access to family planning, access to education, empowerment of women.
What is becoming clear in almost every academic discipline is that one no longer can answer the questions individually in a lab. An individual can make a very important discovery, but as we move in towards a sort of synthesis of our knowledge, it requires piecing things together across lots of labs.
So we are really making progress faster than any time before because of the collective work of the scientific community. We are also dealing in a more transparent and objective way with information, in the way we are publishing our data as scientists, as we are sharing data.
I think it's incredibly important that everybody in the world has free and open access to science. Publishing in 2030 will be completely open, it will be machine readable, and it will be AI ready.
What we need to do is deliver a low carbon future which restricts the amount of global warming to something like 1 or maybe 2 degrees above what it was in 1850 before the Industrial Revolution. That's a pathway that we're not on, but it is a pathway that we can get on.
There's definitely a light at the end of the tunnel. I mean, I started off as a real doom and gloom scientist. I spent decades talking about all the problems. I realized that if all we do is present problems without solution, it's going to lead to apathy rather than action. And I've seen amazing numbers of successes that I didn't know about, and most people don't know about it. So if we can spread the story of what's working and why it's working, we're much more likely to be able to scale it up, replicate it, and duplicate it.
The future is full of challenges and opportunities. The creative efforts and ingenuity of the scientists are providing tools and solutions that can create a positive, a hopeful future. It's a beautiful planet, and we must protect it. I'm delighted and I'm dedicated that the work I'm doing is contributing to that sustainable and beautiful future for the planet.